Hi, Team Flyer. How's it going? Here we are, another beautiful and wonderful Wednesday. It's the first Wednesday of June. Time does fly. We're in the middle of the year already. 2020. As always, no matter what happens throughout the year, time flies. Anyways, today we have a really amazing, wonderful human being of a person. Like, I read her story and I'm like, oh my God, you have to be on the podcast. I'm so happy that you're so excited to be here, of course. And her life is just extraordinary with like military and like a backpack cross driving trip through like South America. And oh my God. So I'm gonna, have her on right now. Her name is Cassey Hauser. Hi, Cassey.
Hello, how are you?
Doing really good. I'm very, very excited to finally meet you and to like share your story, which is like incredibly empowering and inspiring. And as a woman, you're like, you go do it. You I cheer you on. I really loved like reading your story, without a doubt. So, I'm super thrilled to have you. And before we dive right in, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, so basically, I am 33 years old right now. I actually went to college for forensic science and love that. But when I got out of college, I decided to go ahead and try to become an officer in the military. So I joined the Navy and I went to OCS, which is um, officer command school. Oh my gosh, officer candidate school. And then basically I was in the Navy for 10 years and I spent 4 years at sea. And then kind of in that time frame, a lot happened with timing and these types of things, which I can get into. And I last March got out of the military and decided to not start life right away and go ahead and take a trip driving solo from Pennsylvania to Ushuaia, Argentina. But in the end, I made it to Uruguay. I did not make it to the tip.
That's one heck of a trip. I cannot wait to tell our audience so much about that. And definitely before we start, this is like an inner thing. I love community, and I always tell, they always Believer Crew, Team Flower in general, community is so important because we met through a mutual friend. So we're going to give a shout out to Tom Covenver.
Tom! Shout out!
Completely and utterly like in love with this man, I swear, and his whole family. We met way back in the day through Glypho, thanks to Robert Cranes, the
You
founder.
did? Oh my
Yes.
gosh, I also met Tom through Glypho. Oh my gosh, such an old word coming to light.
Exactly. Because that community right there, for those who you don't know, it doesn't exist anymore, sadly, but it existed for quite a few years. Years ago, because this was like 2013. Oh my God, 2013. Yeah. So way back
Holy
when.
crap. Yeah,
And
I was living in Japan at the time when I met him online through blogging in Glypho.
yeah, exactly. Like it's a blog. It was a blogging website, and you shared stories. It was like through categories. There was like community weekly things also, and you could follow each other, but through just like whatever you blog through there. And of course, we already, like in my case, I already found at thealwaysbeliever.com. So like a lot of what I was writing there was also found The Always Believer, and that's kind of like that's literally where and when I started The Always Believer. And with Tom, like he's always been there. Like he's always been like since day
Yeah.
literally one. And I'm so excited that you actually met each other through the same place. That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I actually flew to Ireland a couple years ago and got to go to his small town and meet him and his entire family, his sons and his wifey. And they are just like amazing people. They host travelers all the time, especially ones that he's met in the past. And I've gotten a real sense of community through the blogging travel world from being able to communicate and meet him. And now I'm meeting you and now I'm on a podcast. Holy crap.
Exactly, because like thanks to him, because he recommended me you, and I'm like, okay, sure, because he's always like recommending me people, other fellow bloggers and travelers, and anyone with an interesting story, because he knows about Go to Fly and my movement, and he's so proud, and vice versa, because we're very proud of his travels. Like, oh my God, I'll definitely link him down below because he is so freaking inspiring and a really good author as well.
And
And
yeah, he's written a book. He's written a
yes,
book, which I've also picked up on Amazon. So
exactly. Yeah, we also have a copy here, and it's just we're so proud of him, and I'm so thankful. And it's with the community world. So he told me about you, and I'm like, yeah, of course. And then, really quickly, you were, not to have too much of a spoiler, but you were finishing your trip when you and me communicated earlier this year.
yes,
And
yes.
like I said, I read your story and I just found it so inspiring, and I was like really awestruck because it's like, once again, it's very empowering. And what I always tell clients and our following and our community, especially when it comes to marketing, or not only marketing, just like living your best life, basically, community is everything, literally. So the
Absolutely.
fact that, because you've
Can't
met
agree
him,
more.
yeah, right. He's also, like what you said, very, very welcoming. I know we're totally sidetracking, but we just had to give like this humongous shout out because, and I'll definitely put the links down below to follow like his trajectory. And he's just like such an inspiring man. I met him because he flew to Barcelona. I was living in Spain at that time. I wasn't able to travel to Ireland to meet the whole fam, but I have talked to the whole
Ah,
fam. I do follow the whole fam. um they
same,
they
all
they
of
write
them.
like cards, like not only birthday cards. He sent birthday cards as well, but like Christmas cards and stuff like that, and we're just constantly talking. And it's it's the blogging, like it's been seven. I just realized, I'm like, oh my god, it's been 7 years.
So long. Yeah. I mean, that's really crazy. And I'm so glad I met him. He did the Annapurna circuit in Nepal last year, and he wanted me to join him with that. But unfortunately I couldn't. So hopefully one day Tom and I will go on a trek, and hopefully it will be the Chamonix trek around Mount Blanc in France. So that's it, Tom.
I
Now we
want to
have to
go.
plan it. We have to.
Exactly. I would so love to go. I mean, I definitely always wanted to go to, first of all, Ireland, of course, even more so, but also like just like around all those trips that he always been on. And I'm like, I want to go too. Like, that's so amazing with him that he's just a cool, laid back, amazing human being. So definitely links down below, and the picture, like we have a picture together. Like I'll definitely like research my hard drive for the picture, but I do have it. And yeah, so gladful with that. Blogging communities, just start. Just, I mean, I always tell you all, just start. Just put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay.
You don't need a lot of followers. One thing that was so inspiring to me is I actually was stationed in Hawaii until March of last year whenever I got out of the military. And I literally was just in this meeting, and this girl like kept staring at me, and she was also a lieutenant. And I looked over and she goes, "Oh my gosh, you're the reason I joined the military." And I
Oh
was
my
like, "What?"
god.
And she was like, "I found your blog like 3 years ago when you were on your deployment and writing all those posts about being deployed and all the things that you were going through. And I just thought, I have to go out there and try it too." Like, and so she joined the military. I got goosebumps. And basically, like, yeah, I don't have tons of followers. I'm not really doing it for that. I'm doing it for personal reasons. But that was like very satisfying. I felt really good knowing that one thing.
That is just so beautiful. I mean, this is what we're all about here at the Always Believe community, hence the name. Like, it's not called Ariadna. I mean, Ariadna is my coaching now officially. Obvious, for obvious reason, all my coaching, my future books, and all the like amazing stuff I have in store for y'all. But when it comes down to the community, it's the Always Believer, because it's that sense of like, we're not alone. And it doesn't matter if it's one person listening to our podcast. It could be just Tom. Hi, Tom, again. It just can only be you. It's okay.
Hi, Tom.
Just talking to Tom now. But but it's the impact, like even if it's just one person, it all makes sense. And it's literally, people are like always thinking about numbers, and like, especially because I studied also marketing, and we're like, oh my god, how do I up my game overnight? What do I do? What hashtags? I'm like, that's great for strategy, and I get it, but remember, it's quality and not quantity. Remember that the people who are there, like once again Tom, it's been 7 years. It's been someone who's faithfully there, and vice versa. I've always been like number one for him, like whatever he's doing or whatever he's up to. That's what a community is. Then, friendships form along the way, thankfully, but in general, like, I love that. That's such that's a very touching story of like,
So
because of you,
true.
I am joining the military.
So
Did you
true.
did you write about that? Like, that was what your
Um,
blog was about?
so actually at the time, long story short, I was actually being involuntarily separated from the military under honorable conditions. It was a timing situation, so nothing that had to do with me or what I was doing. I had actually just received my master's through the military and learned Indonesian at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. So I know, so I actually owed them time at the time. But at the time, whenever I met her, it was in the last few months of this chapter, and I actually had taken more of a hiatus because I was internally processing things, and I was not really able to write about it just as easily as I have been over the past couple years.
That is just, didn't I tell y'all? Impressive. Freaking, like, you are just, congratulations. Like, I love people like that, so driven. Like, that's literally what we're gonna start at the beginning of our story. Finally. And it talks about like that, like being what's it called, like perseverance. That's perseverance. There we go. Sorry, my Spanish and my English gets the best of me. Certain pronunciation.
Bilingual is the way to go, so I'll take whatever you got.
So perseverance, inner strength, and lots of drive. So once again, before we dive into the trip that changed you, your profession for the last 10 years, like, walk us through those trials and tribulations, please.
Yes. So when I first joined the military, I definitely was the odd man out. First of all, I was a woman. Second of all, I started out with a group of 50 people, and 25 of us, like literally half of the class, made it to the end. And that is, I wanted to give up multiple times. But after the officer candidate school ended and I did become commissioned, I basically was just told, get down to Norfolk, Virginia, check on board your first ship. Like, there's no training prior to this happening. So you just like go, and you're, as an officer, like taking full control of an entire division of people. So let me tell you, the trials and tribulations of just, I do feel like in today's world, I could go out and take any job, literally any job. I don't even care if I have any. I ran the engineering department on a warship, and I stood engineering officer of the watch on my second ship. And I have no engineering background. I literally worked for a coroner's office, so primarily dead bodies before I joined. So basically, I just had to get down there, take control of this division, and I was doing anti-submarine warfare. So I was basically in charge of sonar technicians and sonar systems. Again, nothing I knew about, and I had to get qualified as a surface warfare officer. And so that's what I did. And my first deployment was the ship's maiden deployment to the Persian Gulf. So I spent months doing Somalia pirate operations, and we did a lot of oil rig operations in the Persian Gulf, dealing with the Iranians, and just a lot of high tempo at the moment in the world, things that were going on at the time. That was 2010. And when I came back from that deployment, I found out I was getting restationed on a new ship in Japan. So I'd be moving to Japan from Virginia. And so I went to, this time I got to school, yay, and so I had to do some pre-engineering, and then I went and became an auxiliaries officer. So I ran all habitability for the ship, and I became qualified as the engineering officer of the watch, and I stood watch in the engine room and ran the engine, all the engineering department like underway. So that was pretty stressful, at the highest level of stress you could be. And it's a different world down there in the dark villages of a warship. And we did a lot. We were in the South China Sea. We were involved in just like a lot of operations. There was major exercises going on. We were in Australia, Thailand, all up and down the coast of Asia. And so I basically was like, okay, well, I don't want to go back to the US right away. So I took a job in Naples, Italy, and went to work at Sixth Fleet headquarters in Naples. So that was a non-ship tour. So it was a shore tour. And that's when it all happened for me, the traveling. I had been in Japan, but I spent primarily all my time at sea. and saw the culture, loved it immensely. My sister was able to move with me to Japan. And so, yeah, so we lived for 2 years together in Japan, and then she stayed for another 4 years after I left. Um,
Wow.
she got a job at Oshima Shipyards. Shout out to Oshima. And so I moved to Italy, and then that is when it just like the traveling and the idea. I mean, I could literally be at work on a Thursday in the morning in Naples, Italy, and our command was attached to the Naples airport, and I could be in London for lunch, for a late lunch at 2 p.m. because of the time difference. So it was just this, I was like, did my life peak? Have I peaked in life? Like, this is just insane. And there was all these, a group of 300 officers doing all the same thing. So we lived valiantly. We lived by the seat of our pants. We had just a wonderful time. And I think a lot of people would say that if they were here right now.
That is, once again, with the same word, impressive, without a doubt, and outstanding. I know that you talked a lot about what we said, like trials, tribulations, because you did so many things and so many like stress points, of course. And before we go
Yeah.
down to a little more nitty gritty of what happens after Italy, I guess my first question at the end of the day is like, I just realized, what got you into the military though? Like, how
So
did you make that leap?
So this is probably, I don't know, if I wasn't a part of this, I would not believe it. But when I was young, we had this career fair at school, and actually there was a female officer. She was a PAO that came to talk to us. It was like the 8th grade. And we went around all day and we had this conversation with this woman. And basically at the end of the day, I wrote 3 things on it. I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a forensic scientist. I'm going to be a military officer, and I'm going to learn Russian. Well, I didn't learn Russian, so we can count
But
that
2
out.
out of 3, basically.
Yeah, but 2 out of 3. And I think
you
it was,
learned a different language as well, didn't you?
yeah, I learned
Yeah.
Bahasa, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it was definitely that, I got that exposure because my grandparents, both my grandfathers, were in World War II, and I did have a little bit of exposure there, but I personally had not been around. My parents were not military people, so I kind of had that in the back of my head. And there was a lot of people that said, oh, come on, you, a naval officer, like, come on. And I was like, actually, screw all of you. Like, I know I can do it, and I'm going to go do it because I know, for me, but I know that I can, and I'm going to. And then, like, being able to graduate with the class that I went in with, it just was, like, very, like, I couldn't have expected anything, but I tested the inner limits, but my mind is strong. I will say that. Like, that is where it is. It's your mind, really.
It's your mind. It's always in your mind and in your heart, dude. Like, you're like, oh, my body can't do that. Can't do like that. Your mind can't do it. Your body can, obviously.
Exactly.
It's one of those. I know it's a brand. It's one of the two. It's either Nike or Adidas, but I think it's Nike as usual with this one. But it's kind of like don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done. And there's like one of those, they always have like ads like that, kind of like, even though it's for sports, but it's kind of the same as your physical ability to keep going. It's your mind that stops you. So literally, definitely agree. It must have been also very rewarding, of course. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, and also it changed the entire trajectory of my life for the better. I mean, when I was in college, you get into the dormitory dramas and I was in co-ed dorms, but somehow ended up on the only dorm floor in 4 towers worth of 10 floors of all women. So there was just so much drama, and I think in the hierarchy of that, I found myself at the lower end. Like, I was very passive. I didn't like confrontation, and if someone would have said, like, you're such a bitch, I would have lamented over that. I would have laid in my bed and been like, oh my gosh, they think I'm a bitch. And in the military, you face every diversity. People hate you for whatever reasons. I mean, you are not going to be able to please 100,000 people. And at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror and you did everything that you could for the best reasons and your personal choice, you learn that the opinions of others legitimately don't matter, in the sense that, I mean, people can definitely, you could always work on yourself. But you have to grow a really thick skin or you're not going to make it in this world. So when people come and tell you these things, it's like, yeah, okay, like now go do what I said, because you know what I mean? We got shit to do. Like, we don't have time for these games. And yeah, it changes your outlook, it changes your life perspectives, and it really put me out of my comfort zone and like really, really pushed me to just to the extreme levels of like what I'm capable of. Seriously.
Oh, I totally, totally, totally believe you. Just for the past 10 years of your life, that's just like hot damn. And I love that of what you said. It doesn't matter what people say, no matter if you're in the military or not. In general, it really doesn't matter. You just got to do you and believe in yourself and trust yourself and keep going, because there's going to be always an opinion, either good or bad. And I get that also, that question or that doubt a lot of times through clients and through our community and whatnot. It's like that fear of like, what will they say? And I'm like, who cares at the end of the day? The most important person is you.
Yeah,
And that's it.
exactly.
You can't please everybody. Like, and there's like,
No.
I mean, this is a whole humongous, a huge side conversation of its own, of course, when it comes to like who you really are and like body positive at the same time and what we see in social media and all these sorts of things. So
Girl, I'll come back if you want.
yes.
I'll come back for another conversation.
Yes, I was like, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, you know what? I was like, we're gonna write it down. Like, she's gonna be back soon. So now you know, flyers. She's gonna be back because we got a lot of things to talk about. Because I would love to go more into your life in the military as a woman, as all these, what we just said, the trials and tribulations, of course. And for this particular episode, we're not going to be all talking about the military by any means, because we do want to talk about your trip and a lot of other inner healing and whatnot. But it's super interesting and exciting to see, and it's refreshing to see someone like you on, well, my screen personally, because we can see each other, of course, but in general, in life. Basically, it's like on screen. They're like, damn, we don't really see this. And I'm like, oh, sorry, we're seeing each other. All right, so going back to your story, you were in Italy. How long did you stay in Italy for?
I was in Italy 2 years. I visited 26 countries while I was there in Europe. The stepping stone, I called it. Naples, Italy was the stepping stone to Europe. And I got, basically, there was an opportunity to apply for a new job, but it was a very forward-leaning job. It's called Foreign Area Officer. So it's basically people that get to work at embassies for ambassadors or become naval attaches / work for naval attaches and the kind of the embassy hierarchy that happens across the world. And so I thought they were offering this position for 5-year naval officers, so I thought I'll apply, and if not, I was considering getting out of the military at the time. I didn't know. And so again, I had a lot of people telling me, okay, like I've tried 3 times, like you're not going to get it. So I decided to go to an admiral, and I was like gonna ask him for a recommendation, because I just didn't want to take no for an answer until he told me to his face that no. So I petitioned to him, and he wrote me a recommendation letter, and I was able to get picked up on the first time. I mean, maybe not from that letter, but it definitely helps when you have the highest ranking military officer on your back end. And so basically they said, okay, well, we don't have a position for you right now, because actually we're taking these 5-year junior officers, but we didn't make jobs for them yet. So you stay in Italy another year, and then you can go to grad school at Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. So I said, okay. And I went to Monterey after that. I got my master's so I was actually chosen for the Pacific area of responsibility, which would be like all the Pacific countries and somewhat Russia. Russia is really part of Europe, but like it involves the Pacific region. And so I got my master's in Southeast, Far East Asian strategic studies, and then went to Indonesian. And at the time, when you're a student in the military, you receive a non-observed fit rep. So basically, I received 3 non-observed fit reps, and at the end of that, I was forced to leave the military because I was not picked up for the next rank.
And that's where your personal story begins. So if you thought
Yes.
that this was her story, no, Sweetheart Flyers, this wasn't her story. This is the previews.
Yes. So I found out August 15th of 2018 is when I finished at DLI, and I was actually moving. They had already given me orders to move to Hawaii. So they said, pack all your stuff up and, you're headed to Hawaii and the results will be out first week of September. And so that gave me a lot of kind of like, no one would move you to Hawaii and pay a lot of money to do that without knowing that you're going to be fine in the military. So I actually was home. I flew home I live in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was home when the message came out, and basically my name was not on the list. And that is a public list, so everyone would see that right away. And yeah, I was pretty devastated. My car and my household goods were already on a ship on their way to Pearl Harbor. And so I started making some phone calls and found out yeah, there was nothing that could be done. And not only that, I had to move to Hawaii for the last 6 months. And I know you might be thinking, how dare you? How dare you be upset? But it's not a very good mindset to move to an island in the Pacific Ocean and kind of, I was definitely surrounded by pretty much everyone coming for honeymoons and tourism and vacation. And then here's me, like, bitter Betty in the background, like, trying to figure out my life. I don't even know what I'm doing. But it was during this time, I think, during that 2 weeks in between me being at home and then me going to Hawaii, it was like, after I get out in March, I'm driving to Argentina. That was just like, it doesn't, like, I know that sounds crazy. And I definitely think there was a lot of inner soul like manifestations, like, but it really struck out to me, like, you cannot move on to your next job. You don't have to. You're single right now. You have money saved up. You need to do something kind of outside the realm of what like people are going to think is normal, and you need to do it for yourself, and you need to do it so that you can move over all the bitterness, because it's really hard to do everything you think you can and then still like lose.
Exactly. You definitely did everything that was in your power to have that rank and to continue in the military, at least that moment after like the endless amounts of moves, obviously, from what we said, from Japan to Italy to California, etc. And I feel like that's a lesson. That's one of the reasons why this is your story for Here for Go to Fly right now, because it's a lesson so important to learn, that it's okay to lose. What matters is that you get back up and you continue. And as always, that door wasn't meant for you. You were meant for something else. And reading your story, and of course now listening to it firsthand, you kind of get that gist as well of like that message within the message of like saying, you had that inner work as well, which is amazing and wonderful. And the fact that you gave yourself that time, because I know a lot of the times, and I'm definitely one of them, I was one of them, I don't do that anymore, thankfully. But when life gets frustrating for whatever reason, you kind of jump back into work, or like you keep yourself busy and you don't really look inward. And you have to. At the end of the day, if you want to find your happy and if you want to find your purpose, you have to look inward without a doubt. And that's exactly what you did. So Hawaii wasn't the best, obviously.
Well, it actually,
But
it did turn out to be really good. I mean, I went there very upset and bitter, and I had to live in a hotel for like 40 days to try to move in and out of an apartment in less than 4 months. But actually, I randomly, Hawaii actually happens to be like a place where a lot of training occurs, and people from throughout my career kind of like came through there, like including the first commanding officer of my first ship. And it was like, I got this 3 months of really good healing, because I met all these people who had seen me at my peak and seen me performing at a really high level and doing really well. And to be able to sit down with them and reminisce and tell the stories only we can ever tell, it was actually really rewarding. And that was really good.
and there's so much beauty and grace into that you took something, because you could have continued down that path. You could have been like still bitter to this day. No, like you took something that was very dark and turned it into something very light. And once again, if you're part of this community, which you definitely are, people listening are, that's what the stories that we'd love to tell, because that's what you have to do with life. So you got into the point of like throughout those 6 months more or less in Hawaii, was 6 months correct?
6 months, yep.
Of going from point A to point B, and your point B was, let me go outside my comfort zone and let me just drive down to Argentina.
Yep.
So,
Basically, yeah.
um,
No Spanish, by the way. I don't speak Spanish.
there's like a million more follow-up questions I need to give you, but the first one was, what did you seek within yourself to make this trip of your lifetime?
Well, one of the biggest things was actually all the negativity I received from pretty much all of my family and friends when I said, I mean, they thought I had lost it at like the age of 32. How dare I? How dare I? But I love all of my family and friends, and I still do. And I actually really respect all of their opinions, even if it's negative or not what I want to hear. But there was something definitely within me that was like, you don't have to listen to that. Like, you just need to plan for, the future and just go and do it. And this is where, I don't know if you know who Alex Hanold is. He's like the greatest rock climber of all time. He climbed El Capitan with no ropes. And he does a TED talk, and he talks about being a master of his craft. And I'm not a master, but just like what he said about listening to the people, but knowing his inner, like how he had felt. And basically, he had memorized every single movement of the climb over 2 years of time, and his amount of preparation, the things he'd done, like that's what I had been doing in my head for 2 years essentially, and coming up with my ideas and protection and what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And people could not wrap their head around just that simple statement, I'm going to drive to Argentina. Like, people couldn't see it because they hadn't been agonizing over it and thinking about it and preparing for it. So I felt like there was a kind of a disconnect, because if you're not thinking abstractly, you're never going to understand what's going on.
That's so sweet. I feel like you're getting emotional like I am. That's such a sweet sentiment of breaking social standard rules, because they all suck, basically.
Well, and also it doesn't help the media of today. That's a whole nother story. But
that's why
everyone thought I would literally cross into Mexico and be murdered. And I just knew that wasn't a real statement. I knew that there was more to it. And guess what? Everybody I met along the way, there's like 3 incidents I can tell you about, and in none of them was I really in any peril. And it was, people came out of the woodwork to help, like strangers. I decided to change the brakes on my car, having never done that before, and literally did not tighten the wheel down in Guatemala and started driving and lost the wheel while driving. So there's that. And literally people came out of the woodwork to help in that situation. Like, there was way more kindness than there was any negativity, and people should not be so afraid, I think.
I agree with everything, and I really want to hear more of the story rather than me speaking, of course, in this particular case. But it comes from, like, it's a two-parter for me. One, we were saying about, breaking social standards, because just because you're 32 or 42 or 15, you don't have to look a certain way, dress a certain way. You don't have to have a life a certain way. Like, it's your life. And if you feel like, traveling the world at 32, even if you're not married or kids, well, who cares? As long as you're happy, I feel like that's the healthiest thing you can do. So we have that going on for a whole different side of conversation for another podcast episode. And then, I am from Latin America. I'm from Venezuela. And even though I didn't grow up there, I am bilingual. I look Latin. My last name is Latin. I have here at the Always Believer, we, like the Team Flyer, we have a huge Latin American community as well, in Spanish. So for me to hear certain things is like, there's danger everywhere. Like, they're like, oh my God, your country's so, well, my country right now is dangerous. Sorry, but it is true, because Venezuela's the way it is. But we're not getting into the political debate of Venezuela. But in general, as a whole, as South America, it's like, of course, there's going to be more dangers here and there. USA is dangerous. There's a whole lot of countries out there, of course. And
I just think, don't let fear rule your life.
exactly. You can't. And as see, I got emotional, so I can't even speak anymore. But
Well, one of the things is that my dad told me, like, please, can you just drive to Alaska? Like, please, for the love of God. And actually, what's so crazy about that is I think it was August. Well, I left for my trip last August, like August 6th, and I came back February 6th. And I think it was June or July that there was like there was a couple murdered on the road on their way to Alaska, like by these two men that they ended up finding later. So I will tell you, even in the most remote areas, when a serial killer or a murderer is going to get out and do what he's going to do, like, I guess you just can't, you can be in your own town and be seen. It's just, don't limit yourself.
just don't limit yourself, because this thing. And then what you and me have in common is we've traveled and we moved a lot. If you know me, you know that I've moved. I just turned 32 in April. So the past 32 years, without a doubt, since very shortly after I was born. And my last move was from Spain to here, the States currently. But this is not my last stop. This is not our last stop because I'm married now. But still, regardless of that fact, we've moved around, and I've moved a lot by myself. Like the vast majority of my moves have been either to different countries in Europe or to even different cities, and just by yourself. And just, you can't let that fear, because like you got to go follow that spark and that dream. And especially going back to what you were saying as we continue your story once more, you were saying that when you had that idea in your mind for such a long time, that you know exactly what you want, and like the master of your craft. And that's such an important statement, because it goes with everything. No matter a trip, it can be a tattoo, because we were talking about tattoos the other day with a friend. I'm like, I've been thinking about this tattoo for a really long time, or I've been thinking about this job, or I've been thinking about adopting this breed of a dog, for example, or whatever it is that you know, in general. And I feel like once you have that, whatever that subject may be, the only person that knows the answer is yourself at the end of the day.
So true. It's, I mean, yeah, and if you want to work on personal growth, which is a key for me, especially, because I could have looked at basically the end of my naval career and been really depressed and really upset. And I mean, I felt those emotions. I felt like there was at least a 2-week period where that was true. But I mean, how can I go away with negative feelings? The military changed my life. It has given me a master's degree. I've learned a language. I've met so many people. And actually, as part of my story, I ended up meeting even more people through the military on my journey through South America because of other people I knew. And I guess when I thought, oh, I'm getting out of the military, I felt like it was like a very big door slamming shut. But actually, the opportunities are abundant. I still have friends all over the world. People give me ideas. They have job opportunities that they share with me because they know I'm looking. And I would not have any of this community if I hadn't been in the military. So now it's all very positive for me. So I'm very happy about
And I
that.
love that you stated as well that you felt all your feelings, because it was also very
Oh,
common. And I've
definitely.
done that in the past as well with like a lot of heartbreaks. It's like you don't really feel your feelings, or like you're not angry and like, oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I'm like, no, it's not okay. It's okay not to be okay. You feel those feelings, live that part of your life, and then of course overcome them. And talking about overcoming them, what you were stated until now, like one of the most common worries that people had for you is, don't be murdered. Just being in very dangerous situations, because it's South America and people just yell every time. You're like, oh my God, how can you? So how did you overcome them? Like overcome those, whenever they were
Okay.
telling you something.
Good question. So basically, on my journey, which was actually so amazing, I left Pennsylvania on August 6th, but it took me till September 5th to cross the border into Mexico. And every single day, and like all these cities, I planned this route and actually had friends, mostly military friends, a couple college friends in these cities along the way. And so I got to just see all these people that I hadn't seen in a while. And like, they invited me into their homes and I hung out with my friends. And on the way, my friend Miguel, who I was stationed with in Italy in the Navy. He's also in the Navy. His dad, they're both from the Dominican Republic, and his dad was living in Corpus Christi, and his name's Manny, and he is salty as F. He's like a curmudgeon from the backwater Navy. He was a submarine commanding officer, so that, I mean, if you know anything, that says a lot. And basically, Manny is like 2.5 hours from the border to Mexico. And Miguel was like, when you get to Corpus Christi, like, you should stop in and see my dad. And I was like, but I've never met your dad. Like, what? And so it turns out I decided to do that. And I ended up I was staying like one night. I stayed for 2 weeks because there was so much, like, he helped me redo the solar wiring because I was having problems, and add a solar panel. So we did all this work on my van to even more, because at that point I'd been living in it for a month. So I had an idea of like some problems. So he let me order a bunch of parts. His neighbor had a boat. So we were like out throwing crab traps and like going fishing. We were going to the shooting range. Like, just, it was like the best 2 weeks like of the trip before I went on. And so I was planning to go to Mexico, and I told him I was going to go. And basically the night before, I freaked out. I actually had this moment of, oh, I don't think I can do it anymore. Like, this was way too much of an undertaking. I got all the way to the borderline, and I don't think I can go. And basically he's like, you're only allowed to stay here one more day. You need to get your shit together, get up. You're going to go out for at least 3 hours. You're going to figure your shit out, and you're going to Mexico tomorrow. And I was like, all right, I guess so. So I went to a Barnes and Noble and spent like 4 hours at the bar there drinking coffee, and I think it was because of the way I was traveling, I decided to cross the border without a plan. So I did not know where I would end up that night, like all of those things. But not in an unsafe way, because there is an app called iOverlander, which you can use to like find places to stay. And so, but what I think was imperative was that I had a plan for the first night, because I mean, like, I was trying to cross the border and like, I didn't have a plan. And so that day I planned everything out, and his way of dealing with it was naval officer talking to a naval officer, and it's exactly what I needed to basically overcome those final moments of, I'm not able to do this. I can't believe I thought I could. And he basically pushed me to the edge. And the next day I crossed over at the McAllen border into Mexico, heading towards Monterrey.
So literally pushing you over the edge, obviously. The edge of going to Mexico.
To the border. Yeah.
To the border. Here you go. That is very, very, very sweet of and going back to the word of the day right now, which is community. It goes starting way back the way 7 years ago to Tom once more. To
Tom! We'll just keep saying Tom!
Just like randomly yelling Tom throughout the episode. Tom! Thank you so much, Tom. There you go. So, starting first with Tom, all the way to like what you were saying, this is like a dad, not a dad, well, he's a dad, obviously, but your friend's dad, there you go, that you never met, and having that relationship and having that community and that, like, those moments of like, it's gonna be okay. Like, I can do this. How?
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much more I want to ask, and you're definitely going to come on to like continue this part of the story, of course, as well as like a bunch of little different subjects. So don't worry, Team Flyer, she's mine now. She's ours. So she'll be back 4 times. So, a really important question that I had in mind was, what was your biggest difference before and after the trip?
So I know that you're going to think this is really crazy, but I actually was still having some doubts of like, am I a strong woman? Like, am I out in the world? Am I doing this stuff to my fullest extent? And this trip really tested the outer limits because one of the things is, because I chose to go solo, and I met a guy named Enrique. He's actually an American. Shout out to Enrique. He was in a mini school bus, and I met him in Flores, Guatemala, with a group of other people, Agustina and Franco, and Rice and all these guys that I met there. And whenever I met him, he was like one of the only few people I met traveling solo. And he was a man, a male, and he was speaking Spanish. So he definitely had a little bit of a different situation, but I had to wake up every day and take every responsibility for everything. So if there was a car issue, if it was a mechanical issue, if something needed done that was super gross that you would just tell your boyfriend or husband to do, I had to do everything. And I guess that sense of responsibility, I wasn't understanding the weight of it, like, because I couldn't be tired. I couldn't drink too much because I had to be the one to drive. So there was this really a sense of strength in the fact that I literally took responsibility for every action and everything that I had to do to get to where I needed to be when I needed to be there.
That's a very, very interesting answer without a doubt, because it's one of those things that I'm like, honey, of course you're strong. But as you were talking, I was thinking maybe your biggest difference as well between being in the military, that you were surrounded by people the whole time. So you counted on a team. I mean, yeah, you did a lot of individual stuff, of course. Whereas, you know, just getting on in a car, one in your van, in this particular case, of course, from Pennsylvania to Argentina, you were going to be by yourself 90% of the time, basically. So it's more of like what you
Yeah.
said, that inner
And well,
strength and courage.
I definitely drove every day alone, but I will say that a lot of the time I did meet, I mean, even on Ireland, or if there was like a restaurant that said you could spend the night, like everyone wanted to be my friend. And so, just having like a really outward positive personality, I was able to like never have to be alone for, totally isolated. And I know people feel that way because I've seen posts about it in the threads. I don't really feel that way. Like I find my independence, and like I can be in huge groups of people, but I can also be really independent. But I always found friends. I don't know, like just even like the whole family that ran the restaurant, they would always offer me to come over and like learn some Spanish. And it was really refreshing. And actually, this style of travel led me to all these really local encounters that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I know that.
Exactly. That's so super important as well. I feel like your personality and mine are really similar because I'm also very outspoken and like I'm very sociable, and I'm like, oh, okay, so like I'm just gonna go talk to people randomly. And my husband is very different than I am. Balance is key, as we always say. And we were talking the other day about like how I met a couple of my friends. And in general, it's like friends are friends or whatever. And I met two of my really, really closest friends. One at the beach randomly, like all this in Spain. So it's kind of like that's where we lived, of course. And the other one at a bar that we just started talking. He's like, how do you do that? How do you meet random people? And like another closer friends, like, how do you start talking to strangers? I'm like, I just do. And I feel like that's something that you need when it comes to these kind of trips, and just, kind of get out there and talk to people, because you never know at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, every situation is totally different, but I mean, Manny had taken me to salsa classes. He's a very big salsa dancer. So I was getting introduced to that entire thing. And I mean, like, I do not have good moves. So it was so fun. And I started doing salsa, like, if I would see things or if people were dancing, and I met random people that I would go see in a heartbeat through that community as well. So I don't know, there was just so many opportunities to meet. And honestly, I was more like so involved in meeting so many people all the time that it was like sometimes I was like, all right, tonight I'm just gonna go somewhere and not get out of the car.
um I love that, and I also have to like make sure people understand we are a very nice, kind community, Latin American people in general. Like we really are. Like of
So
course there's
fun.
dangerous bits here and there, but we're just like, we're gonna go help, we're gonna be kind, like that's who we are. If you met us, it's gonna like I see your stories come to life, because like I said, that is a big part of my backstory, of course. I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like that salsa dancing, or just kind of like having your own, everyone trying to talk to you and saying like, oh, like, and show you around kind of bases.
Oh yeah,
um
definitely.
so with pushing yourself and having that courage and strength, and having like, I'm strong, I'm capable of doing this, you were on the road for, of course, many kilometers, many miles. How did that
Yes.
do you mentally?
So I actually, so I bit off more than I could chew. I will be the first one to admit it. When I had met Enrique, he had already been 6 months in Mexico alone, and I had like come through Mexico like a blazing horse on blazing saddles. And so like whenever they found out what my plans were, and the pace that everyone was traveling, I was way, I mean, taking a lot, because in 6 months, which most people would probably say is not even doable, drove from Pennsylvania all the way to Uruguay, Montevideo. And I basically admitted that, but because of the journey and because of where I was in my life and what I was doing, I decided to go for it. I mean, I didn't have enough time, and I know that, but it didn't take away from my experience, because the plan for me would be to drive every morning very early, like 8 a.m., and I would drive 4 to 5 hours max, mostly 3 to 4 is what I would try to do, and then enjoy the rest of the day where I was, and like sometimes stay a little longer, stay a little less, depending on who I met, because it actually was more dependent on the people I met and what they would tell me about the area. So that's why I didn't make any plans for anything, and I would listen to the locals and the people and the tourists. And essentially I spent a lot of time in my head, and it was not until I got to Colombia, when I was in Bogota, I had shipped my car from Panama to Cartagena, and I had driven down to Bogota, and I was taking a flight to Brazil, which is a whole nother story, just for like 5 days, and coming back, and I met this guy, and he owned this hostel, and it was a yoga hostel. Like, it was all, I mean, everything was centered around Zen, meditation, yoga. And I was sitting with him, talking to him, and he just like was so in awe, and he was like, "You have had so much time in your mind. Like, what was that like?" And I hadn't thought about it like that, but I realized like how much that it matters, because I literally could not escape any of my problems. I had to work through everything like as it was, what I was feeling, how I was feeling it every single day in all those hours. And I mean, I can't recommend it enough. Like, literally, it's just the best form of kind of being like meditation. And that's why people do those 10-day meditation camps and things, because you really have to face all of your fears, all of your insecurities, even if you have strengths and you want to face that, like, you have to do it all. You can't get away from your mind.
Not one bit, without a doubt. And I love that. I also do yoga and there goes my voice, meditation. And that's the thing at the end of the day, that you have to look inward and, of course, face your fears and whatever quote unquote demons we have, or whatever negative thought, whatever you want to call it, face all that. And a journey like that you took, this is why it was so different from the military, and this is why this is actually your go-to fly story, is because you had that time and that self-reflection, and you had to, that knowledge that you had to look inward, basically. Yeah. And so I do have, like, once again, you're going to be back on many times to have like a whole bunch of questions, but we're almost here at the end, sadly, due to time. I guess the last few things would be, you also told me that you feel grounded and stable for the first time in years. So yeah. Like, even though you went like traveling a whole bunch throughout your whole lifetime, now that you're back in Pennsylvania for a limited time only, you feel grounded. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so actually it was this past Christmas going into the new year. I was finding myself in Quito, Ecuador for the new year, actually staying with, so we had a girl come live with us when my sister went to live in Italy, and she was from Ecuador, and I got to go stay with her family over the new year, which just so happened to work out. Like, I didn't even have a plan or whatever. And so basically I was deciding to drive from Ecuador to Uruguay, and that is a huge undertaking if you just look at the mileage or kilometers between Quito, Ecuador, and Montevideo. And I have like a month left to do an exuberant amount of driving, and I was really having self-doubt. I mean, I was like, oh, like, what was I thinking? Should I just go to Lima and stay in Lima, Peru, and like ship my car from there and whatever? Well, right before I left her house, I came to this decision that I was not going to do that, that I would go all the way to Uruguay. And it was like literally the next day, everyone I met on the road was just like everyone I needed to just give me the positivity and all of these things. And as I came to the close of my journey and like actually made it, because I do understand that, I mean, there's this kind of like thing always in the back of your head, like, you could be hit by a truck. You could, all these things, like the healthcare isn't as good. You don't have insurance really on your car except for liability. So like there is a lot of things, of factors that could happen. And there was like a lot of stress involved with that. Just, I mean, not like outwardly, but like just in the back of your head, like this could happen tomorrow, who knows? And with the pace I was going, and basically coming into Buenos Aires, that's actually where I flew out from. I was 5 days there after I shipped my car, and it was like after I made it all the way, I was like shaking for like 2 days with just like this exuberance of like, I freaking did it, and like I am strong and I did it, and I proved it to myself, and it was really for myself. And like after that, it was like I was calm, and I was like, all right, it's time to just go back and face the world. And look, now it's COVID-19. And like you can never know. I got home just like within I got home literally back my car back to Houston, and me driving back to Pennsylvania like as they were shutting down states. So I can't even believe like how close that was to me being stuck in Argentina. I mean, anything could happen. And I just felt like for the first time ever, there was just a calm. Like I had done all these things. It was insane. I met all these people. I had lived life to the fullest, and there was just this calm. Like I just felt like, all right, like what's next now? Like there's no bitterness. There's no frenzy. It's just like calm.
And that's, once again, this is why I wanted to ask this question, of course, or keep this question for last, because it's a beautiful sentiment to have after the whole journey of listening to like all your ups and downs and in betweens. The fact that you're calm, even throughout this moments of despair for some, of course, with COVID-19. But that aside, it is a very beautiful sentiment to have within yourself, to be that still and calmness. And much like we were saying before, like that reflection of like the yoga, meditation, for example. And of course, I do love those 10 days training because I feel like they're so fundamental. And of course, to each their own. But you had that for 6 months, literally. So now you're like, oh, I know myself. I'm stronger. I know I can do this. I know I'm able to do so many other things in the world. I know I have a community no matter where I go. And you learn so much about yourself, the good and the bad and the ugly and everything between, that with being calm, I love that sentiment that you're like, I'm calm. I'm good. I'm ready. So finishing up, because we're basically done with our lovely, beautiful hour. I'm going to ask a few more questions really quickly, the same ones as always, that we ask every person in this who comes on and shares their story. Is 3 words to describe you.
So my top 3 are motivation, initiative, and grit. Those are the 3 words that I would use to describe myself.
Those are really, really cool words, and I haven't heard grit. So anytime, because I ask this questions all the time, and grit's the first time I hear it, and I love it. Yep, I love it. Yep, that's you. What are you thankful for?
I am just so thankful for literally all the opportunities I've been given in life. I mean, I think it says so much that people get set on a path and you don't even know where that path is going to lead you. And I'm just so thankful that my family was stable and could present some opportunities. And I don't take that for granted. I've met so many people on the road, and there's so many stories, so much struggle, so many things. And I'm so thankful to actually just be able to interact and hear the stories and get out in the world and experience the cultures and continue to do that, because it just shapes who you are as a human. And everyone should experience literally like people's lives and what they go through and how they live, because there is so much going on out in the world. So just, I'm so thankful to be able to get out there and see it.
I am super, super thankful to have you on, and you're definitely going to come on more times. We're going to talk about it right now, people. Guarantee, you have my word. And yeah, just being thankful about like what you said, like you don't take things for granted, like you go and have all these opportunities. And I'm sure we're gonna find you in other different creative ways because I feel like that's gonna like all your journey. I feel like you're gonna start sharing it one way or another, apart from the pictures and stuff like that. Because that was actually my other question. My last question actually is where can we find you?
So I do have a blog. It's called thecasseyexcursion.com, Cassey, but I have kind of not been writing since I crossed the border to Mexico on there. And so the main place you can find me right now is on Instagram at Cassey Excursion, Cassey Excursion.
I'll definitely ask Tom. As
Tom!
Tom
Last shout out for
Sticks.
Tom!
Tom once again. I'll drop links down below so you can follow these two beautiful human beings, of course. And definitely, you can reach us at social media, of course, like Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, Twitter, etc. I mean, within that, let us know what else you want to hear from Cassey because she will be on more times. So if you have any other questions for her journey, for whatever she thinks, DM us in general because her doors are always open because you can see she's very sociable, of course, but also for like future episodes, just let us know on either today's post, obviously, because the same day it comes out. But if not, just in general, just like, hey, like I heard the conversation with Cassey, like, can you ask her this or can we talk about that or whatever? Because it's just, I love having people like you through this movement because, like you said, we're so full of stories around the world and it's a beautiful thing to go travel and be able to travel. But for those who can't, for whatever reason, put them all together throughout this community so you can actually have those words of wisdom live on, of course. So thank you very much, Cassey. It's such a
Thank
pleasure meeting
you.
you and having you, and you're such a bright light in the world. And thank you so much for sharing your story and being who you are. You're
Thank you so
kick-ass.
much. Well, I'll see you guys again soon then.
Exactly. Oh yeah, you're on. You're part of the crew. You're here. So yeah, so new episodes every single Wednesday, both in Spanish and in English, because we are a bilingual community. And what we said, you can find us in anywhere and everywhere. And check out Friday, June 5th for a super duper special surprise. So stay tuned for that. All right. Have a beautiful day and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, Flyers.